Ian, we discuss Jim Sterling from time to time. He's the video game, I would say, current events commentator. Is that accurate? And,
Sure.
And he had a video, 22 minutes long, made some great points about the state of AAA games and the pricing structure.
Okay.
Now, it was a little long-winded, not going to lie. Maybe could have cut off about 8 or so minutes, 22 minutes, maybe 10 minutes or 12 would have been fine. But he brought up some arguments about the state of AAA titles, obviously DLC, ballooning the overall cost from $60 to who knows, $80, $100, season passes, DLC, loot boxes. Obviously, this has helped sour the AAA market, or at least the outlook of it to people like us, who are around the games. So he argues in this video, if you haven't seen it out there, that AAA games should really cost $0 because they're making a lot of money off of DLC and season passes, obviously, and loot boxes already, that they're going to make their money. He also references a couple of articles. I think one was someone from EA in 2009 saying games should really cost $30. He referenced one or two other developers saying, yeah, other games should cost more money. Other games should cost less money, but ours should cost this much, and this is why. So just throwing out anecdotes like that about game costs. The other argument he makes that I kind of see his point is like, okay, if you come from the stance of that, if game companies need to make their profit margin, they should just raise the price up, then, start the games now coming out at $80 instead of $60. And he argues that game companies would do both because they're greedy and they try to make all the profit because they're publicly traded companies, and that's what they're set out to do, is make as much profit as possible. That companies would not change their DLC ways and season pass ways if they started at a base price of higher, whether it's $70, $80, $90. They would do that and still have the DLC and still have the loot boxes and still have all the garbage that we complain about today that Star Wars Battlefront 2 pulled off. It was an interesting take. I agree with some of his points. I don't agree with others about it. What I think the points he missed out upon that we can discuss is that this is not the video game history from 20 years ago or 25 years ago or even 10, 15 years ago,
Right.
where games have become more and more prohibitively expensive to produce. When we talk about a game like GTA 5 that makes a ton of money, or a Call of Duty game, we're talking about games that have budgets of Hollywood motion pictures. A lot of these games that take 4 years to develop, that have hundreds of people working on them at one time. We're not in the era of Super Nintendo games anymore, or even PlayStation 1 games, where, there might be a less reward, they're making less money, but there's a lot less risk involved. So that's why these companies have gone away from single-player game experiences for a while. For example, because some see it as very risky. That's why we saw a cancellation of a single-player Star Wars game, because rightly or wrongly, they probably said this isn't going to make us the money of a game like Battlefront 2, where we can have loot boxes. And
that
DLC.
was they canceled the single player game to basically make a Star Wars Destiny game.
Exactly. It's because single player games they think can't make money, which I don't agree with, but that's the stance. They're not going to make as much money. So we have to think about that when we talk about pricing of games, is that at least these AAA titles, these major ones, cost a hell of a lot more than they used to. They are riskier. Absolutely. But we never talk about inflation ever when we talk about video game prices.
True.
We sort of put that in the back of our heads, that $60 from 20 years ago is a hell of a lot more than $60 today. So games have actually gotten for us cheaper over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember PlayStation 1 titles towards the end were regularly about $49.99 new, and then we started moving into about the regular, I would say games were regularly $59.99 throughout the Xbox 360 and PS3, when Wii games were still $49.99. And then, now that we're in, once we were in Wii U, PS4, Xbox One, Switch territory, now all base prices are $60.
Sure.
As far as
I'm just talking about what the dollars were.
Oh, yeah, no, yes.
So for 1985, the dollar was, let's see, the price difference was, so it was worth 25% more, the dollar in 1985. So that means if you had a $60 game in 1985, let's see, what does that come out to? Calculate that out. So $60 in 1985 was $76, right?
Mm-hmm.
In today's dollars. In 95, let's see, the price difference. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I had this off. Okay, $60.95 was worth $96 today. So that's more than 50% more from 20 years ago.
Right.
And even 10 years ago, let's look at 10 years ago. So I'll forget the 85. We'll just deal with 20 years ago and 10. So let's see. $75. $60 in 2005 was worth $75. So as you can see, as Ian says, that even when he brings up those prices, the $60 went a lot further overall then. We just didn't realize it. So when you actually look at the power of the dollar, it's decreased and decreased, and that's what inflation is. So really, the $60 game from 20 years ago really cost us today $40. We just don't see that happening.
Right.
People make more money than they did 20 years ago. People that are developing these games, working on these games, have to make more money to live. Living prices, it increases. The cost of living, housing, food, whatever, gasoline even to drive to work. So that was ignored in Jim Sterling's video. And that's not excusing DLC at all.
No,
but you have to bring that point up.
That people have to bring up, and I've had to bring that up with people at the store before too, just in friendly conversation, et cetera, et cetera. It's come up, and this is spiraling away a little bit from the DLC, but people always go, man, video games are so much more expensive now than they were when we were kids. And a lot of these were people who weren't having their first video games. They weren't buying them for themselves. It was mom and dad. And it's like,
no, they were expensive.
It's like, they're not. I'm like, here's a receipt for a brand new, because I mean, they come in boxes, more frequently than you'd think. Here's a Mario Kart 64, brand new, $74.99 in 1998. Okay.
I paid $80 at the Capcom store for Street Fighter 2 on Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
$80 in, what was that, 92?
Right.
It's a ton of money. We'll use my calculator.
So, right, I'm just saying that in terms of video game prices, yes, I agree with the inflation that, it probably has become better for the base game. That
was $140. My $80 would be worth today. I paid $140 for a pretty good translation of Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo at Capcom store. So that's a lot of money for a fucking 12-year-old thing.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, I mean, just getting that out of the way, I think the base price of games is not nearly as drastically expensive as people think it is when you take into account what the price of video games has been over the years. With DLC, I agree with Jim that even if the base price of games was higher, they would
take that profit too.
They would take that profit too, and they would probably still do DLC. That doesn't stop me from wishing that, and this kind of spirals off onto a question that someone said, do you think AAA games will ever be more than the base 60? Someone asked us, Mark Musso. I kind of wish we would see a time where a base game price does not exist.
Or a general, you're saying slide it up and down.
Yeah.
How it used to exist on the NES. In the NES, you had budget titles like the black box games when they came out. They were $25, $30. Then you had your Super Mario 3s were like $40 to $50. But you even had your Koei games that had more chips in them, and those were like $60, $70 even on the NES.
Well, and I mean, that is part of the manufacturing cost that we don't have to worry about today with CDs.
But there is a cost going into the game either way.
Right. What I would love is, because it would be so much better for me, is stop trying to sell me a base version as a full game. Sure. Have the balls to charge what you think your fucking game is worth with everything in there.
With all the potential DLC.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. I don't care if you're going to trickle that out to me later. Make that a promise. Say, this is what's coming out later. This is what you're getting up front. But just charge me for the whole fucking game.
So you'd be okay spending $85 or $90 if you knew, okay, this is it. I'm getting the full, complete package. Just like if you're buying pinball machines, you're getting the quote-unquote limited or competitive edition that has everything. All the toys, all the trinkets,
right.
Everything.
And I realize that may not be how a lot of people want to do it, but to me, it would make me a lot happier psychologically, and it would be, I just want to know the price of what I'm paying for. essentially, like when I make a decision to purchase a fairly big game these days, like a AAA game or something that would likely have DLC and stuff, I make my decision based on whether or not I'm getting the stuff, the season pass. I don't want to have to worry about all that shit later on. I don't want to. It's that feeling that the game's going to be out of date. And then if a game is worth less than 60, then don't charge $60 for it. Nintendo is good with that. They will oftentimes shave $10 off of a Switch game if they don't feel like it's worth the full release price. A lot of the physical releases of indie games, aren't being, they're not charging $60 for, limited run charges, like 30, I think, for most of their releases, if not all of them, except for maybe some special edition ones. That's incredibly reasonable. There are places. You look at the PC Steam marketplace. That's a perfect example of people just charge what they feel the game is worth. And I wish that's what would happen with modern console gaming or AAA titles in general, is stop feeling like you have to charge 60 and then tack all this other stuff on when you could just pitch me your game with everything in it instead of trying to have to tell me what you're parceling out, and just be like, this is what you're getting for 100.
Sure. I think the other argument I would just make about people complaining about the DLC or loot box or whatever season passes, because let's be honest, this is a large revenue stream now that a company is not going to give, a publicly traded company especially, is not going to say, oh yeah, we're making $50 million a year off of this, let's just throw it away, we're not going to make it anymore. No, it's going to stay here, but the consumer has a choice not to buy those games.
Yeah,
if they don't want. There's tons of video games out there. If you don't like how Battlefront 2 did business, don't buy a future Battlefront game. Don't buy an EA game and vote with your wallet. There's still plenty of games out there in the digital sea.
Don't buy the current Battlefront 2 and be like, oh, I guess I'll give it a chance, if you're already pretty much dead set on the fact that you hate it.
Because obviously they didn't put a dent. It made the top 10 list still.
Yeah.
So people that raged online, you really didn't affect it, or like you said, you bought it anyway. And you fed into that ecosystem that you claim to hate. So that's all. It's not going away. To say, though, games should cost nothing is obviously silly, because then what happens when you don't sell the game or you take the risk? Guess what? That game company's gone, DLC or not.
Right.
So let's be reasonable here. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There.